Welcome to the Biz Bash podcast, where we make biz strategy a piece of cake. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Cami, but you might know us better as Eliza and Calligraphy and Cami Monet. We want to help you, our fellow stationers, artists, and calligraphers, confidently build a profitable and personality-driven creative biz.
We're here to share our honest-to-goodness advice and actionable strategies for ambitious artists.
So put on your party hat, quit being a procrastinator gator, and let's get this party started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Biz Birthday Bash podcast. Today, I have Mikyla of Ink and Press Co. with me. Hello, Mikyla. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being willing to jump on here, and thank you for opening up the questions to your audience or asking your followers specifically what they wanted to hear from you, because this is going to be really fun. It's a little different from what we usually do. Which is a basically back and forth Q&A style with Mikyla, because you guys asked so many good questions to her that I couldn't narrow it down to just one. That didn't really seem fair.
No, I love it. And honestly, thank you so much for having me on the show. I mentioned that I have been a big fan of the Biz Birthday Bash podcast since you guys launched. And so I'm super humbled and very flattered to be here, and am just really excited about this opportunity to be able to chat with you and kind of go through some of these really great questions that everybody asked.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's really exciting, actually. I love it when listeners turn into episode guests. I feel like that's the best way to go about it.
I'm so flattered because I've listened to all of the other guest podcasts and it's just so fun. I mean, I never thought that I would ever be on the show, because I think, we all feel like we're still beginners and we're still learning and we're still students. So
yeah,
in my mind, I was like, oh, what would I have to share? But to know that people want to hear from me and on the show was a very oh my gosh, I feel so flattered. A very wow. Thank you. I also feel like I'm so unqualified, but I mean, I'm totally here for it.
Totally, definitely a compliment. And I feel like anybody at any stage always has something to share. So hopefully it's a little bit of a confidence booster, if anything else, that people are like, hey, I really want Mikyla to be on the podcast. So I'll read your official bio before we jump into the rest of the questions. So for anybody who does not know Mikyla, she is an Idaho native married to a New Zealand Kiwi, the owner and designer behind Ink and Press Co. An artist of many forms, Mikyla is passionate about meaningful design and draws her greatest inspiration from the works of her favorite artists. Mikyla is based in Scottsdale, Arizona, but works with couples from all around the world, and her work has been featured on Vogue, Martha Stewart Weddings, Bride, Style Me Pretty, published in the Not Adorned magazine, and more. All right, everyone. So that is the official bio from Mikyla, but now I want her to tell us in her own words a little bit about her journey. And actually, this is a perfect segue into the questions from our listeners, from people in Mikyla's audience, who I also recognize some names. There's totally some crossover here. So the first one is from Priscilla Basilio, and she wants to know, Mikyla, about your entry into the stationery world and why you were drawn to this as a career path, and also include how long you've been doing it and little things like that.
Yeah, so this upcoming November will officially be 5 years of doing Ink and Press, which feels like the blink of an eye and also the longest time stretch simultaneously, and I don't even know how that's possible. Which just also feels so crazy because, there's the Malcolm Gladwell rule of 10,000 hours and you finally become an expert. And if you calculate the whole 10,000 hour rule, it equates to about 5 years of full-time work. And I was joking with my husband that, we all probably did 10,000 hours alone during the doubleheader season coming out of COVID. But officially only 5 years in November. But I started my stationery journey, I feel in the same way that many other people have. And that was as a bride to be myself. One of my college roommates and lifelong best friends is actually a wedding planner. And so I was pretty familiar with the wedding industry. I would always help her on the side with different projects and different clients and weddings that she was working on. And so naturally, when I got engaged to my now husband, she was helping me plan my wedding. And when we were talking about stationery, I asked her, I was like, oh, who's like a stationer or a calligrapher that you recommend I reach out to? And she just looked at me and said, oh, I just thought that you would do it. And I mean, she and I were both business majors together, but I was always taking art classes on the side, just like very naturally drawn to those things. Loved art history, was always learning and doing like Adobe things with Illustrator and InDesign and Photoshop on the side, just out of my own personal interest. And so she just point blank was like, I thought you should do it. Like, you're so creative and talented, you should do your own invitations. And so from there, that kind of gave me the confidence boost as like a very starting artist and like a very hobby artist to kind of do my own invitations. And then after that, I fell in love with the entire like invitation suite process. I fell in love with the wedding industry even more. I loved how the wedding industry was such a perfect fusion of business logistics, which was my major at the time, but also creativity and artistry. And I feel like there's no other industry where you find such an incredible fusion of the two. And so after I did my invitations, I remember, and she and I joke about it now, she was in her room watching Game of Thrones. And I had just mailed out all of my invitations like earlier that day. And over dinner, I had been thinking, like, how can I do this again? Like, this was such an incredible experience. I had so much fun, like picking out envelopes and vintage stamps. Like, I want to do this forever. And so I barge into her room as she's watching Game of Thrones. And I'm like, I'm starting a business. I'm doing invitations and I'm going to name it Ink and Press. And it like all just came to me in that moment. And she like peeks her head up over her computer and was like, I think you should do it. And then like keeps watching her show. And I left.
Oh my
So we kind of joke about how like funny that moment was. And like, that's literally how my name came to me. It was just like in the moment of like, and I'm naming it Ink and Press. And she was like, great, you should do it. And that was truly like how it all started.
That is hilarious. I love that story so much. And it obviously has worked out great. Here you are 5 years later, still doing the same thing.
Yeah, it feels crazy. I mean, obviously, you know from personal experience too, like every year you learn a little bit more and add a little bit more to your toolkit. And there are those hard times and those refining moments and obviously the defining moments as well too. But it's definitely crazy to like look back and think all of the growth that's happened over the 5 years from that moment of just deciding I was going to do it on a whim and then actually like building it into what it is now.
Yeah, amazing. So since these aren't very like contiguous, if that makes sense. So
Mm-hmm.
just a heads up, listeners, if it feels like a little disjointed, we don't exactly have super smooth transitions between questions, but I'm going to try to like jump around a little bit here to see if we can go to a question that's going to make sense next.
For sure.
So, Bid Adieu Studio asked, how should stationers go about finding their niche and style in the industry?
Yeah, I love this question because when I was first starting out with my business, I was very, very drawn to like modern, minimal typography focused, a lot of white space, very intentional design. And I had told my wedding planner friend that I was never going to offer calligraphy services, which is such a like LOL, look at me now type of comical laughter thing. But I was just so drawn to like these very minimal, just intentionally designed typography invitation suites. And it was kind of in my first few clients that really helped me define my style and find my own niche, which obviously has evolved into kind of really specializing in foil press and handmade paper. But those first few clients really helped me define what I wanted to be as a stationer and what my personal artistry was. And there was a question on here that was talking about like defining your own style and defining your own artistry. And for me personally, when I was first starting my business, I kind of realized that one of the ways that I could really set myself apart and set my artistry apart from the other artists in the industry whose work I loved and admired was developing my own calligraphy script. And so naturally, I had couples requesting to work, have a calligrapher and have calligraphy addressing for their envelopes. And while I did outsource that at the very beginning, I am like such a type A individual. I wanted complete control personally. And so for me, I'm like, I need to do calligraphy because I want to be able to keep just everything in house and not have to involve all of these other individuals with all these other timelines. It just kind of felt like it was a messy process. And again, there's no right or wrong way to approaching this, but it's just how I felt personally. And so I signed up for a calligraphy class and started learning calligraphy, started learning copperplate, and from there developing my own style. And I think that early on decision of developing my own calligraphy style really helped me find my niche within the industry. And then from there, kind of guided my artistry to recognizing the details and the elements within the paper good world that I was really drawn to and I really loved. And a large part of that was being so attracted to foil printing and handmade paper and the combination of the two of those together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to start playing around with things you're drawn to initially. And I especially love what you said about your calligraphy too. I feel like your calligraphy, it really looks different from anyone's I've ever seen. Like you really have done such a good job of setting yourself apart in that way.
Oh, thank you. I always joke. I'm like, it feels like it's just my handwriting, but like prettier. But my actual handwriting is like actual chicken scratch. So I'm like, my calligraphy was just like me trying to like elevate like my everyday handwriting. But I think a lot of calligraphers probably feel that same way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting depending on how people learn too, because it is kind of funny to see when people take lessons with other calligraphers. It can be not necessarily like obvious, but it is interesting. I could list off a few calligraphers that have similar styles because they learned from the same person.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's so true because obviously those foundation and some of those roots are going to transfer in the way that you approach a different letter stroke. And it's funny because I had been listening to this podcast one time where they were talking about how the band U2, they were trying really hard to like imitate some of like the rock bands from like the 80s that they really loved, but they were just really bad at it. And he was saying like, oh, I could never, it's Bono who's the lead of U2, right? He was saying that he could never shred in the same way that like all of these like great rock bands could. And so he was just trying to do his own variation of it, but like he accidentally kind of created this like new iconic sound that's so unique to the band U2. And I feel like my calligraphy is kind of the same way that like I had a good foundation, like I had signed up for a copperplate calligraphy class, and so I was learning some like good foundational resources, but at the same time, like I feel like my calligraphy style kind of came out of this space of like me just trying to create something beautiful, but maybe not knowing everything or not having the resources. And when I first started my calligraphy class, my copperplate teacher was like, you have so many bad habits in the way that you hold your pen and the angle that you write. And I was like, I know I have these bad habits, but it's almost like now ingrained into like how I approach a letter or how I approach the, combining strokes. So while I really appreciate your compliment, I feel like probably a lot of it comes from like me trying to just like figure it out, but not necessarily knowing what I was doing in those early stages.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is that regardless of somebody's style, it will always be for someone, right? And the people that
Totally.
it isn't for, those aren't your right clients. So people have clearly gravitated to what you're doing and your style. So regardless of whether or not it's like traditional or you hold your pen the right way or you form your letters this way or that, all that matters is people are paying you for your work. So there's value there.
Totally. Totally.
Which is very cool and should be encouraging to anybody listening because, I mean, I think the style is gorgeous. But we always say, or a lot of people have said, like, we're not Nutella. We can't make everybody happy.
Yes, it's so true. I love that phrase.
Or pizza. People substitute it with all sorts of things
Yeah,
that are
they'll
like
do like
really, really
tacos
popular.
or something too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, this is the perfect follow-up because Shop Aria asked if you've ever had an issue with your calligraphy being read incorrectly by the post office.
I have not personally had that issue, but I do know and have friends in the industry who have. I think that in the early stages, I don't know if you remember this, but I feel like probably like 5-ish years ago, it was when I was first starting out. There was a really, really popular kind of calligraphy trend going around of like these very wild, loose scripts. And I like, obviously, we're all so drawn to that because it's just so beautiful and authentic and organic. Um, but I remember like, someone posting, I can't even remember who it was at the time, but someone posting about how they had done a client order in that very wild, loose, organic script, and they had had really bad results with the post office being able to read the envelopes. And so I remember reading that, and it kind of ingrained in my mind of like, all right, whatever I address for my clients, I need to make sure that it is legible. So that is something I've always had in the back of my mind as I've developed my own calligraphy script. So I haven't had an issue with that personally, but I do know it's a very real thing. But also in the back of my mind, you know how like when your grandma or your grandpa writes you a birthday card and it's like quite literally the most impossible thing to read because they have like the most like straight cursive script from like the 60s. You do what I mean? And you're like, it's so beautiful. Like I know that that's cursive, but you're like, what word is that? Is that
it's
happy?
like squished. It's like squished, Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and I kind of tell myself, I'm like, if the post office can read that, then they can obviously read calligraphy. It will be interesting to see how that changes because it's totally wild, but they don't teach cursive in like elementary school anymore. So I wonder how it'll change over time. But I haven't personally had that issue. I don't know if you ever have, Elizabeth, but for me personally, I haven't had an issue with my calligraphy being legible.
No, I've never had that issue either. And I think there's Lindsay of the Postman's Dock is somebody I refer to a lot when people bring up this point because she does envelope art. It's not just addressing
her
or
envelopes
writing
are
in cursive.
incredible.
Exactly, or calligraphy. It's like these extensive art, wild flourishes, beautiful illustrations.
There's like birds and florals and
yeah, and those make it through the post office too. And so I've literally heard you could like write an address on a potato, and as long as you have as much postage, it'll make it through. So I just like feel like calligraphy is much less of a issue than people think.
Totally. I could see it if the ink color was maybe too light or too similar. I had a client one time who wanted to do dark green on a light green envelope, and I feel like I had to really make sure that the dark green ink was dark enough for that contrast. So I could see if you had like an ink color contrast issue, but as far as like the calligraphy letters themselves, I just feel like the post office can read anything.
Yeah, I know. It is kind of miraculous. Like, Cammie and I always say, for as much crap as we give the post office, they are actually pretty good at their job most of the time.
I always joke. Basically that. I always joke that it's like your sibling, only you can make fun of your sibling. It's like only stationers can get mad at the post office, but we will all like come to their defense at the end of the day because they process like how many pieces of mail? It's like a couple 100,000. It's incredible what they do.
It is absolutely amazing when you think about it. You can put something in a box on one side of the country and shows up in a box on the other side. Like, it's pretty fantastic.
It really is.
Hey guys, we just wanted to hop in and talk about one of our amazing resources, the A to Z directory. All of us have thought at some point, how did she do that or how did she make that? And maybe you don't know where to start or how the heck to produce this amazing product you've dreamt up.
Well, the A to Z directory is the missing puzzle piece in your biz, you guys, seriously. So it's built in the form of a yearly membership, and it's your one-stop shop for finding suppliers and vendors for all the things. Literally where to print everything from custom invitations, greeting cards, mugs, koozies, acrylic printing, letterpress, custom ribbon. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. and it literally goes from A to Z. From acrylic printers to zipper pouches, we have it in the A to Z directory.
We want to help all of you search less and create more with this list of 300 plus vendors and suppliers. Don't worry, they're very organized. It's not going to be overwhelming and confusing when you join. And this membership also includes access to a private Facebook community. It's incredibly active and involved. And if you need a question answered fast, that is definitely the place to go.
Yeah, our Facebook group really is the best. You guys, everyone is so helpful in there. And we're in there too, answering questions you guys might have. So it's a great way to get access to us and ask us things without sliding into our DMs. So we're more likely to answer you in the Facebook group, just saying. Anyway, also in the Facebook group, this is new for 2020 and we're really excited about it. We are hosting monthly Power Hour Q&A sessions that are live, and these are only available to our A to Z directory members. So you can hop in with us live and ask us all your burning questions in real time and just hang out with us every month. And we do these at different times so you can actually be there live, and the replays are always available in the Facebook group for members.
This resource is priced at $147 a year, which honestly is extremely affordable and it's full of so many benefits, such as exclusive vendor coupons for members only. And we would love to have you guys join. Seriously, it's kind of like our family and our tribe. So visit bizbirthdaybash.com/directory to sign up today and use coupon code podcast2020 to receive $20 off your first year. That's podcast, all caps, 2020 for $20 off your first year.
We can't wait to see you in the Facebook group.
Okay, so what question do you want to answer next? I guess I'll let you choose.
I thought going back to number 4 kind of felt natural, but
okay, all right. We'll go back to that one, which is all about how much research did you put in before bringing foil in-house and the trial and error process. Like, what did it look like for you?
Yeah, so when I was first starting out, I was very drawn to the combination of foil printing on handmade paper. I think because I was initially so drawn to very minimal typography designs that contrasted with the organic edge of a handmade paper, I felt was really beautiful. Obviously, my personal style and my artistry has really evolved into this very romantic fine art aesthetic since my early roots. But my love for handmade paper and foil printing has always been there. So one of the very first invitation suite orders I ever did was gold foil on black handmade paper, which feels crazy that I worked with black handmade paper before I ever worked with ivory handmade paper. But I just had this really incredible couple who did this very moody wedding and they wanted black handmade paper. So I researched and talked to quite a few different print shops across the nation and outsourced the order to a print house, and they did the foil printing on black handmade paper for me. At the time, I think that it was kind of a case where most print shops were foil printing on handmade paper for the first time, and so we were all trying to figure it out together. But after that order, my wholesale rep called me and was like, we were able to get enough solid prints for your requested quantity, but we just want you to know we're never going to do it again because
yeah,
it was such a tricky combination to work with, and handmade paper has so many nuances and the foil just would not stick. And so I kind of laughed that I was their first and last order with foil printing on handmade paper because it was just such a tricky combination.
Mm-hmm.
So that really kind of set my heart on really wanting to do, I knew that this combination was possible. I knew that the results were just absolutely stunning and exquisite, but it kind of set my heart on, I want to figure out how to do this as seamlessly and as flawlessly as possible and really kind of become an expert in this area so that I can offer this to my clients time and time again because I love it. So naturally, every handmade paper brand has a different response to different foils. There are different foil combinations, the way that a foil is created. Some are created with an easy release formula, and some formulas are designed for plastic, and some formulas are designed for cotton cardstock. So there was a lot of research that went into finding the optimal combination of a foil that worked best with handmade paper, and then a handmade paper that could really grab onto the foil. And as we know, handmade paper is completely made by hand. So some are going to be made with, dyes or a coating that will almost reject the foil. So there was a lot of research that went into figuring out this ideal combo. I feel like it probably took me about 3 or 4 years to really find my tried and true combo. And that was just a lot of trial and error, definitely expensive at times. A lot of orders that I almost had to have reprinted or print nearly 3 times as much in order to get enough quality prints for my clients. But I feel like it is a combination that truly is so unique and iconic to the ink and press aesthetic that I've built over the years, and something I still love to this day.
Such a good and thorough answer, and definitely shows people that behind the scenes it's a very slow process, because often what we see, everyone wants things to be immediate anymore. That's just kind of how our culture is, unfortunately. But behind the scenes, it's taking so long to get to where you are at this point, and the type of work that you're creating and the print method you're using. So I feel like that was a really great and informative answer. So thank you.
Good. Yeah. And I mean, this, but Shasta Bell Calligraphy and I, foil and handmade paper is something that is so iconic to her brand as well. And she and I have become really good friends over the years. And so we brought together our combined knowledge of foil and handmade paper. And just a plug, we released that into our Cultivate course. So if people are looking to learn a little bit more about handmade paper and foil printing in-house, and also just knowledge to be able to outsource your foil printing and know exactly what to say to your print studio to be able to get those optimal results. We took all of those trials and mistakes and everything that we wish we would have known when we both started these journeys 5 years ago and combined it into that course. So hopefully it is easier for others who are interested in that combination, and that would probably be a good resource that I would recommend people turn to, because we really do lay everything out on the table. I always say, I'm like, if only I had this information starting out, it probably would have saved me a lot of tears, because there were so many times that I would just cry after seeing an order, or just feel so terrible about how expensive that order actually became to get a quality product. But everything that we wish we would have known when we first started is packed into there.
That's amazing. And I have to say, your website and the Cultivate, is that how you say it?
Yeah, Cultivate. It's
Both
French for cultivate. So
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I have no French experience at all. But I was gonna say both of the websites are so beautiful. Are you building those out yourself?
Yes, I did. Thank you so much. I mean, I definitely started with a base template and adjusted from there. So I can't take sole credit. But yeah, I did all of my website, all of that. I was that little 13-year-old girl who got obsessed with Blogspot and blogging when it first came out. Not that I myself was a blogger, but I would design other people's blogs for them. And so I've always kind of been very attracted and drawn to web design. My dad is a coder, so I would ask him and be like, can you help me turn this part of the banner blue when I was little? And so I feel like I have a very weird collection of knowledge when it comes to those things. But thank you so much. I think that they look nice. I mean, obviously someone who specializes in web design would probably have a few tips for me, but they're great. I think that they look really aesthetic. So we're happy with it.
And if people are converting, then that means that you're doing something right.
well, yes, we'll go with that.
Yeah, exactly. They're both beautiful, and
thank you.
I love having a little bit of that as a creative outlet too. Getting to do some web work occasionally
Yeah.
can be really fun. So, all right, transitioning into our next topic. There's quite a few different ways we could go. So which one are you feeling drawn to next?
I totally default to whatever you think, Elizabeth. So, I mean, you know better too what people might be interested in. So, whatever question you feel works great.
Okay, let's talk next because we're already on the theme of like business and foil, just all things invitations before we jump into social media and other topics people have asked about. Flow Paper Co. wanted to know what goes into designing and launching semi-custom suites and why was it the right fit for your business model? And I will say that I added the second part about why was it the right fit. And obviously, as a disclaimer, I know that you can't. This episode is not meant to be a course on like semi-custom suites by any means. Just give us like the very brief overview of that decision for you and the effort that had to be put behind it, basically.
Yeah, no, I love this question. And I think it's such a good one because I feel like people within the industry kind of have like a very polarized response to semi-custom suite. There are those who are very for them, and then there are those who believe that like semi-custom collection should not exist and it should only be custom work. And I'm kind of in the middle, I feel like. So when I first started Ink and Press, I actually started and like launched my business with the launch of my semi-custom suites. And I know that there are those who recommend, doing custom work for maybe 1 to 2 years before you launch a semi-custom line. And that way you can really define your style and really like hone in on your personal aesthetic. For me, starting my business with my semi-custom suite was the right fit because creating invitations from the beginning I didn't have paying clients basically. So creating an invitation suite, creating like a semi-custom line of 6 different designs kind of gave me that experience and kind of gave me a portfolio that I didn't have. So I feel like starting with my semi-custom collection kind of was able to slingshot me into having a portfolio and having at least 6 different designs that I could book a client with and kind of in a like roundabout way, give them a guaranteed result of something pretty, if that makes sense. So for me, it kind of built a sense of trust with potential clients. So for me personally, like doing my semi-custom collection from the very beginning was the right fit. Now, I will say that I only kept my very first semi-custom collection for about a year and a half. And that was a really great experience to be able to have those. But I don't think that when you design a semi-custom collection, you have to be like married to it for the rest of your business, however long you decide to like continue your business. So about a year and a half, I feel like my style, I had that chance to really define what I love. My artistry had improved. I was so much better as an artist with drawing and my calligraphy style and the things that I was attracted to. So I decided to scratch my original semi-custom collection and launch my entirely new collection, which is my current semi-custom collection inspired by all of the works of my favorite artists. And there were 1 or 2 designs that I kind of continued over in a very inspired way, different elements that I loved from those very first designs, I kind of carried over or incorporated. But for me, like I say like this, my semi-custom collection for a very long time before I got very established in designing custom invitation suites really was the bread and butter of my business. And my approach to my semi-custom suites was very much so a customized experience for my couples. And that is actually how I still operate today. So even today, I like probably 80% of my work is actually a semi-custom suite, but I offer such a high level of personalization for my clients that no 2 semi-custom suites look the same. I basically tell them that the design on the card themselves is what they're picking, but any of the added details, the color palette, envelope liner, vintage stamps, vellum wraps, raw silk ribbon, wax seals, all of that is totally customized to them and their wedding aesthetic. So you can take the same design and it can take on two entirely different aesthetics. I keep saying the word aesthetics, but you can take the same design and it can take on like two entirely different personalities almost based off of what each wedding is. You know, you have one design, and if you're working with a burgundy, black, and, you know, copper for this like wedding in Scotland, is going to look entirely different than the color palette where it's a Bridgerton aesthetic and you're getting married at Rosecliff and it's lavender and light blue. And even though the design itself on the paper may be the same, each invitation suite is so different from the other because of the way we've personalized it. So me personally, like, I'm a big advocate of semi-custom suites. I think that it's a really great chance to establish yourself as an artist and find what you like. But I also think that if you've designed a semi-custom design or collection and you don't feel like it's the right fit, that there's no harm in almost like divorcing it. You're not married to it for the rest of your business. You can create something and love it and offer it for 8 months. And then after one wedding season, be like, you know what, I'm kind of tired of it. I'm going to retire that design and move on to something new.
That's good advice, because it is interesting with semi-custom. I know quite a few people who have that built into their business model, and you can definitely get stuck making certain designs that, like, say somebody latched onto because they scrolled way back in your Instagram feed even and asked for it again. And some people are too nice and they just don't know how to say no, which is totally okay. That's their prerogative. But yeah, there's so many interesting dynamics that come out of that. And maybe that is something you guys would consider teaching in the future, because I know people have a ton of questions about it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So moving on to the next question. Eliza Grace Papery asked specifically about what do you need to keep in mind when designing for letterpress, but in your case, foil. So I guess I would talk about kind of like the physics of what the design can bear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, I think immediately what comes to mind is a stroke. You know, there's obviously like a minimum line balance that a letterpress or foil design can handle. Letterpress isn't as much of my expertise, but when it comes to foil printing, I mean, I definitely keep in mind how thick my lines are. Naturally, my calligraphy style is a little bit more monoline than some other styles out there. So I find myself like always like highlighting my entire design and adding like a 0.15 stroke to everything just to make sure that, you know, nothing falls off the page. But I think that's probably like the biggest thing is like keeping in mind like the nuances, the like paper and the material and the substrate you're working with, and kind of just becoming an expert in the combination of the two so that you know what it can handle.
Yeah, exactly. Britt from Swell Press teaches a whole entire course called Learn Letterpress that I know she dives into all of that so much if anyone's looking for letterpress specifically. But there's definitely quite a few parallels between the two in terms of having a plate and, like you said, the width of your strokes, making sure something doesn't fall off the plate. But then from there, they can also depart from each other a lot and how,
for sure,
how different they are.
And Britt is like such an expert when it comes to letterpress printing. So anytime someone asks me, I'm always like, go over to Swell Press, because like you said, like it is her expertise, and her courses I hear are so incredible. Like I would love to get a letterpress printer someday, and know for sure I would sign up for her course to be able to learn how to letterpress print.
I feel like it would fit in with your business model perfectly with what you're already doing. So I definitely root for that.
I want one so bad, but we are still like apartment living. Yeah. And I tell my husband, I'm like, I can't get one of those like massive, like how many tons are those? They're so heavy.
Who knows? They're so big. They're so big. Even with the house now, there's still a part of me that's like, I would really have to consider whether or not I would want to do that.
Yeah, they're massive. Mikyla, I love her letterpress videos that she does and her reels because you can truly get a gauge for like the size. I know Isla's like a little bit shorter, and I'm 5'7", so I would probably be the same height as the press, but it's such a fun chance to be able to see her videos because you kind of get a full scope for how massive these letterpress machines are. You know, you have like the Chandler and Price, and they can get up there. So I would love to have one, and I'm like manifesting that for myself in the next coming years. But right now, I'm like, I literally think it would fall. Like, we live on the second floor. I think it would fall through the floor and like land on like the residents below us. There's just like no way we could make it work.
Right. What is her Instagram? Sorry, I'm not familiar with the person you were talking about.
It's the I Love You. It's Ayla. Did you change it? I'm pulling it up right now. Ayla Pena. Or sorry, AYLAPENA.
Okay. Yeah, Isla. Okay, this is familiar to me. Sometimes it takes a second for me to like realize there's so many of us in the industry to realize who's who.
And I feel like there are niches within niches. You know what I mean? Like, we're all within like the wedding invitation niche, and then there's like even niches within our own niche. So there's so many of us and so many talented creatives.
Yes, absolutely. It is really amazing. And yeah, I see this picture of her standing by her press. Wow.
I know. And then she has so many fun reels, and like truly you can just see like how massive these machines get.
Speaking of reels, this is a good transition now because everybody wants to know about your strategies for Instagram reels and why you were basically able to step into that. I'm not quite sure like entirely what I'm asking here, but I know that you were one of the people that I saw like first making reels that had to do with stationery at all. So I feel like you were really great about kind of dipping your toe in and just trying it to see what happened. Like, I'm pretty sure that's probably how I found you because I saw one of your reels or someone shared one at some point. So tell me a little bit about that. And then maybe for people who are struggling with that because Instagram has pushed for it so much.
Yeah.
Like, break it down because I think it's simpler than people realize. Like, I think people are putting more weight there than there needs to be. I don't know. You tell me.
No, I completely agree. Like, the way that you said that sums it up perfectly. So when Reels first came out, I think it was a pretty scary thing for all of us and pretty uncomfortable and unfamiliar. But I just remember thinking like, it's the early adopters of a new Instagram feature that are the ones who really reap the benefits and really reap the rewards. And so when Reels were released, I was like, I really want to try to be an early adopter. I kind of have that mindset whenever like a new feature comes out. I think like, okay, if I can be an early adopter, then like I can kind of like reap the benefit and try to like reap the rewards of like this new feature, even though it feels awkward and uncomfortable and really scary because it's just unfamiliar terrain. But one of my good friends here in Arizona, she is a really incredible cookie artist. And it was so funny because when she was sharing with me her strategy with Reels, she was kind of sharing with me some of like her concerns and her worries. And it was so easy for me as an outsider to be able to give her perspective. And I remember chatting with her and saying, like, you don't realize, but it's the most mundane things to you when you are baking your cookies and decorating your cookies that I find so interesting because I'm completely unfamiliar with the entire like cookie decorating process. And so I was like, you should just like prop up a camera and like when you're outlining the cookie and then doing the flood and then adding in the details for, you know, the flower cookie that you're making or the football cookie that you're making, like whatever it is, I find that so relaxing and so interesting because, you know, you may do it every single day, so it seems mundane, but to me, like it's unfamiliar and therefore intriguing. And when I was telling her this, I kind of had this aha moment that it would be the exact same for people who don't do stationery. So for me, in our day-to-day life, like how many wax seals have we melted? Like hundreds and hundreds.
So many.
Yeah, so many. So to us, melting a wax seal is just like another task on our to-do list. But to somebody else who's never melted a wax seal before, it can be totally mesmerizing. So I think people kind of do overthink it and kind of psych themselves out when it comes to Instagram Reels. But really, it's like the most boring, mundane thing to you that somebody else is going to find so intriguing because they're unfamiliar with that task.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh, yeah, good. So, I mean, I'll say like some of my first reels were probably a little bit more of like the comedy aspect of like trying to make a certain trend work for me. And those reels were fun and they were successful, but I feel like my reels really took off when I started showing my process and showing me making something. And it's actually not as hard because you're already making it. So if you just kind of had a tripod out and when you're already melting the wax seal, just throw your tripod up, put your phone on there, click record, and you're already doing the work. So you might as well just record a quick 15-second clip of you doing something you're already doing. And then to somebody else, that's going to be totally captivating.
Yes, I love that so much because I think that's kind of what I've been realizing as well when I'm watching a lot of videos of reels that people have done and that I have tried to explain to friends who are getting hung up on it. And like, I'm not one to talk, okay? I barely like use Instagram anymore. So I'm definitely like not putting work out there or showing my work on social media. But for example, what Isla's doing was showing her letterpress and just a letterpress even like opening and closing is so captivating to somebody
Yeah.
who's not familiar with it. Like you said, all the small things that we do all the time are mixing an ink or anything, just anything in your personal craft, painting a watercolor flower, like who
Even
knows
like
what it
cleaning your
is.
brush, like
Yeah.
it's something that to somebody else, like they've never done that before. So they're curious, but to you, you do it every single day.
Yes. And I was going to say, I think because of the stigma that reels have, they're a copy of TikTok. Like we all know this. I think everyone thinks that you have to be like dancing or being silly or kind of you already, you kind of said that too. Like my early reels had that more like comedic, trying to do the trends aspect of
Mm-hmm.
things. And now you're like, now I've just kind of settled into showing my work and what I'm doing. It doesn't need to be like forward facing or
For
doing
sure.
something silly.
Yeah, and I know, so many people who are within our industry, they're not necessarily comfortable like showing their face on camera. And some of my very first reels, like you can just see me like bright-eyed, smiling, at the face, like, hi, this is me. I'm just trying to like join in on this trend and like, yes, I'm dancing and like, yes, it's awkward.
Uh-huh.
But when you are showing your process, like you don't have to show your face. You can just show your hands working. And then it's also great because it really cues people into the truly handmade luxury process that are invitation suites. And I feel like my clients finally are starting to understand like, oh yeah, like when you charge X amount for calligraphy at dressing, that makes sense because I have more of a scope of how long every single detail takes. So it's also helpful because you're educating potential clients. And I just feel like it helps everybody understand that, invitations and paper goods aren't something we whip up overnight. They require a lot of thought and intentionality.
Yeah, what are your thoughts? This is just me having a follow-up question
Yeah.
on like your relationship with day of items for that reason
Oh my
because
gosh.
they're so often rushed so much compared to the rest of the process. So is that something you offer to clients and what does that look like? Is it as crazy for you as everyone else if you are doing it?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I laugh because day of items are like the death of every stationer. Like
Yeah.
With invitations and save the dates, you have so much time to like design and curate and really like source like these really thoughtfully created designs. And then when it comes to day of, it's just the nature of the process and the nature of, when the menu is finally confirmed and when they finally get their RSVP counts back and their finalized guest list. So it just naturally lends itself to being such a rushed process. And I wish I had a better answer, but this was definitely something that, someone asked, where do you see your business 2 to 3 years from now? And, it's funny because I am heading into an upcoming maternity leave. And so I've kind of been thinking about the ways that I really want to fine tune my process and fine tune my business and kind of fix maybe some sore points that I'm feeling right now in the thick of it, and trying to figure out like how best to go about day of items, whether that's requiring a certain timeline and making couples like sign off on like I have to have this by date or something, is something I think I'm in the process of right now, like trying to fine tune in my own business. So I don't have like an exact answer, but I just feel like I'm in the trenches with everybody on that one. I don't know if any of us have the perfect formula figured out or the perfect solution for that.
Yeah, I know. It's tough. I feel like when you really get into the weeds with day of items as a stationer, it's almost like you have to have a team. I just feel like at a certain point, it's impossible to manage like the save the dates, the invitations, and the day of items without at least somebody who's helping behind the scenes a little bit and some sort of team communication system or a way that you're keeping your work and your clients organized and all of that. There's just so much.
It's so true. And typically, like the day of items are so, one detail requires so many steps. So you're like, yes, it's a name card, but it's a name card die cut into the shape of a butterfly with debossing and calligraphy. And then the wings are folded up and then there's tape on the back. So you're like, it's never just like the simplest of things. It's like always so detailed and so intense. And you're like, yes, it's really fun to create. And yes, it's so beautiful. But it's not just one task on my to-do list. When you write name cards for a rehearsal dinner, it's not just one thing, but that one bullet point has so many sub bullet points that require so much time.
Yes, seriously. Also, speaking of just invitations and getting all of that done, Sold Pen had a question about how you prepare your stationery timelines for clients who are overseas. So how does that look different than your clients who are US based?
Yeah, so a majority of my clients are US based, which obviously makes that process a lot easier, but I do work with clients around the world. And when it comes to working with clients who are overseas, the big thing that I'm not able to offer for them is obviously mailing services or like a stamp curation. And so when I'm preparing that timeline, I always add on about 3 extra weeks for a target ship date, just so that it accounts for any time where, like, when you're mailing the package of the assembled invitation suites to your client, obviously, they need time to be able to adhere their own postage and then mail in their local country wherever they are. But you have to mail them those assembled suites. So I always try to give an extra 3 weeks for like a mail date. And that's just in case that package, as we know, like gets stuck at customs, gets flagged somehow, gets stopped somewhere in the process. I feel like this happens to all of us. But as far as like trying to remedy that situation, I feel like if I ship with like FedEx or UPS or DHL, something that is going to be tracked the entire way instead of, the USPS and then working with whatever their local postal service is, I get a better result. But other than that, I feel like the timelines are pretty much the same and the process is pretty much the same for clients who are overseas, other than just giving yourself a little bit more time to ship. Now, small caveat when I say that the process is relatively the same. Sometimes some of my international clients or worldwide clients, they want to design an invitation suite in a language other than English, which is something that I've done and love doing. My husband is we mentioned in my bio. He's from New Zealand, so he was born and raised there. He's Maori. And so when we were married, it was really important for us to include touches of his Maori culture in our wedding. So I love when I have that chance to, work with another couple who they want an invitation suite in Korean and English and Spanish or whatever language is their native language. So the process for those types of clients is going to be relatively the same, except I do require an extra round of proofreading. And then I have like an extra box in my Dipsado form that says that like they have confirmed and they have proofread it multiple times and recognize that whatever language we're working in is not my primary language. So therefore I can't be that extra set of eyes to proofread because I don't know Mandarin Chinese or I don't know, Italian or French by heart. But I think, the client, regardless of where they are, it's pretty much the same process, just a few small changes here or there.
Nice. Yeah, that completely makes sense. I like the extra checkbox idea a lot.
I totally got that from you guys.
Oh, yay!
Because I have your guys' contract, like plug for your guys' custom stationery contract. It's amazing. And I loved that there were small parts where people had to initial on top of signing at the bottom. And I was like, I am absolutely using that for like my proofreads and my final proof and all of these forms, because the more you have someone actually initial and sign, the more you know they're actually reading it.
Yes, exactly. That's why the USPS mailing agreement is like every single line needs an initial.
I have that one too, and I also love it.
Because there's so much that could potentially go wrong or that they need to be aware of. And that's the whole point, is awareness, right? Of like just the clients need to understand what could possibly happen and that is completely beyond your control.
Totally.
Okay, so doubling back to a question that I haven't asked you yet from Bree. It was just her name was Bree. I don't think
if
there was anything else. Oh, Bree Thomason. Okay, great.
She's such an incredible photographer.
Wonderful. She said, what are some trends you'd love to see or make happen as a stationer?
I was thinking about this when I saw her question come in, and I don't know if I necessarily have like a specific trend item as far as like, I think we should all need to bring back scroll name cards or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I have like a specific thing. It is always fun to see kind of how trends naturally come and go. Obviously like during the height of COVID, when there were those really intimate COVID weddings happening, there were, hand sanitation signs that we were all making and like custom designed masks that we were all making. And like, that was definitely something that was very specific to that time and stage of everybody's life. So I don't really know if there's like a specific product or like a specific trend that I feel like we need to make happen as a stationer. But if there's like a change in mindset of, striving for like authentic designs that are true to that artist's personal style, then I'm all for that like mental trend, I guess you could say. I think that there are definitely really beautiful things that like we can get distracted by. And there are some really incredible designs that I love and admire. And I see so many other stationers execute so flawlessly. But like as a personal or like as an artist, like really defining and trying to stay true to my personal style, I kind of have to ask myself when it comes to a trend, like, is that something I would naturally come to? And sometimes the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is no. So I think, maybe a trend of us trying to approach whatever trend is happening and asking ourselves if that's like authentic and true to our style and really defining our own individuality is one that I'm all for, instead of just doing something for the sake of doing it. I don't know if that's an actual answer or not.
No, that's beautiful. Because when I saw that question too, I honestly wouldn't have an answer for that one either. Trends I'd love to see stop would be putting shoes on top of invitations for photos. So
totally, yes, all here for that.
I think we can all agree.
More we could shout that from the rooftop, and like still to this day, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, yes, they're Manolo Blahniks, and like I love them, but like do that with the veil, do that with the lipstick or the perfume, just like not the invitation card.
Not the invitation card, please. Yes. So maybe not as satisfying of a question as Brie or answer as Brie would have wanted, but an answer nonetheless. So these last questions, we have one from Alicia's Infinity and then one from Collective Script they're a great way to kind of end our conversation and segue out of a lot of the nitty gritty we were talking about. The first one's very reflective from Alicia's Infinity, and she would like to know, what do you wish you had known earlier in your business?
Yeah, this is such a great question. I think that maybe less like what I would have known and maybe more what I would have cultivated sooner as an artist. And that would have been confidence in my personal style. It's funny because I grew up, training in classical ballet, always loving art. But for some reason, I don't know if it was necessarily the people I was surrounded by, but like that was never the cool thing. So I feel like part of me kind of had that insecurity. I remember like the first time I ever thought that it was like cool to like art history or like ballet was when I saw like Rory Gilmore, and like it was cool to kind of be nerdy. Like she made it somewhat cool to kind of be nerdy. So I think kind of going into my business, there's like there was that like deep rooted insecurity of like the things that I'm naturally attracted to are probably not very popular or not very like mainstream. So I think earlier in my business, had I known that the more I leaned into the things that I loved, the things that felt authentic and true to me, my love for art history and allowing the works of some of my favorite artists to like guide my style and guide what I'm drawn to and inspire my work in so many ways. And kind of like being okay, being really terrible at the beginning, like you always hear every great master was like once a beginner. And you always see that joke that it's like, I got really good at what I'm doing by being really terrible at it. And like, that is so true. So I think just kind of knowing in those early years and like those early clients and those early projects that like, it's okay if it's really crappy. You just have to keep going. And like, it's okay if what you really like may not be popular. Just like keep designing what's true to you and keep doing what you think is beautiful, and like you will carve your own path and like you will carve your own niche. And like you said earlier, like in the end, like what you refine and hone as your personal style, like someone's going to be attracted to it. And I can't remember, like I remember looking it up one time, but how many weddings there are a year, there's like several 100,000. And at the end of the day, like every stationer probably just wants like 30 clients, give or take a few. So you don't have to be the right fit for everybody. You just have to be the right fit for like 30 people out there. Yeah. So I think just kind of having that confidence in my own style probably would have made some of those early lessons a little bit easier. But granted, like those early lessons are kind of what pushed me to have that confidence in my own style and that confidence in my personal artistry.
That's so good. I love it. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think that'll hopefully be really great for a lot of people to hear and encouraging, right? That there's plenty for everyone to go around.
Oh, there's plenty. I know people say they're like, it's so saturated. And I'm like, not really, because people just keep getting married. And like nobody's trying to book every single marriage and like every single wedding out there. Like I'm happy with like, a couple, like I'm happy with like 30 give or take projects a year. And like, that's great for me. I know everybody's number is like so different and dependent on them and like their capacity and their team, but there's plenty of weddings to go around for everybody within the industry.
Yes, absolutely. So obviously you are coming up on a season of maternity leave, and this is so hard to ask, especially before like the baby is here and seasons are changing. But that doesn't mean that you don't have goals for your business still. So I would love to know, and this is from Collective Script as well, where you see your business 2 to 3 years from now.
Yeah, so this is like the golden question for me right now. I'm definitely like anticipating a transition and a change in my business. It's hard for me to be able to say right now how that will look because it's just also subject to change. My husband and I will be welcoming our first baby boy this upcoming December. So it feels very exciting to know that there will be a change, but it also feels equally terrifying to like have all of those questions surrounding what that change and what that transition will look like. I don't like see myself never not, that's two double negatives. Like I always see myself doing something creative. Like I'm such an artist at heart. And that creative expression and that creative outlet is something that is so important to me. And I tell my husband that I am a better Mikyla because of my business. And if that having client projects on the side of having our family is something that makes me a better Mikyla and therefore a better mom is something that's really important to me. So I do have a couple of projects planned for the fall season coming out of a maternity leave. I know that Shasta and I have chatted about a couple of other like cultivate topics that we would love to release for like upcoming courses. So I don't necessarily know like how things will necessarily evolve and change. I think that's kind of in the beauty and the unknown. But I like to think that, like, hi, I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere because I do love the stationery community and I do love my business and what it is and what I do so much. So I'm excited to see how things evolve and how my business changes over the years. But I think that that's kind of the beauty of artistry is that you grow as an artist and things ebb and flow and come and go. And that's just part of like the ride, you know, and letting it all unfold.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot, like you said, that you don't have any way of knowing at this point. And that's what makes it so fun too, is it's truly a great adventure. Anything we take on in life when there's any unknown, whether it is having a new baby, starting a new business, buying your first home, like there's always an element of that that's so exciting. And it's not like prohibitive by any means. It just means that things will look different and you should be excited for it.
Totally. I mean, like I said, part of me is like, I wish I could control every single detail.
Yeah.
You know, like I wish I could have like all of the answers. And there's times where I like get very anxious being like, oh my gosh, where are we going to live? Where are we going to like be doing these things? Like, where are we going to settle down? Like, how is it all going to change? How is it all going to happen? But I think that's just kind of the case where like, if you just like leave it to the universe and let like life just take its natural course, then something far more beautiful than you could have ever anticipated will unfold. It's just kind of having that trust and that faith in the process.
Absolutely. That's perfect. I love that. Well, we have officially hit an hour and pretty easily. There was so much to talk about, which is really, really great. And I know that people are going to love hearing about all of this from you. So before we officially wrap up, just share where people can find you. I know you shared some of it earlier, but make sure you share all your social media handles and your websites and talk about your courses one more time.
Yeah, so people can obviously find me over at Instagram. My handle is Ink and Press Co. And then same over at TikTok. You know, we're trying to build the TikTok sphere, but we'll see. I feel like we're all a little like, how do we do this? And then my website over at inkandpressco.com. And then for those who are interested in any of the Cultivate courses, Shasta and I have two together. So our first course is all about flat lace styling. We teach everything you need to know about elevating your flat lace to create really publication worthy pieces. And also on top of that, photographing them. We both photograph our own work on film. And so we share kind of all of the tips and tricks and everything you need to know from styling an invitation suite to getting those optimal photo results, whether you're doing that with your iPhone or a film camera. And then our second Cultivate course is all about foil printing. So we teach everything people need to know about foil printing in-house. So we both work with tabletop presses. So it's very like the right appropriate step if you're still in an apartment like I am. The foil press is obviously a much smaller space requirement than a large letterpress machine. I know that they have tabletop letterpresses too, but the foil press, it's a powerhouse for its size. So we teach everything about foil printing and working with handmade paper. The course does cover, obviously, foil printing on other substrates too, whether that's velvet or cotton cardstock or vellum. And then as far as handmade paper, we share everything you need to know about handmade paper and more, working with it, whether you're foil printing or digital printing. Actually, let me take that back. We share everything about handmade paper that you need to know when it comes to working with foil printing and where we source our favorite brands from and kind of the nuances of each. Side note, you're going to have to edit that part out about digital printing because we don't talk about digital printing and I don't want to make any claims of something that we don't cover.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We can also just leave it in like that too if you want to say, hey, I accidentally said that. Because people misspeak all the time and there's so many different printing methods and stuff. Either way, we'll take care of it. If for some reason this doesn't get edited, you guys, just remember Mikyla said
our little chats on the side. Digital printing on handmade paper is so tricky. And like, it's something I did in my early years, but I don't actually offer digital printing on handmade paper anymore because
it's hard.
It's a beast. So if anybody is thinking about offering that, I would just say letterpress or foil printing only.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mikyla. I've really enjoyed this today and cannot wait for everybody else to hear it as well. So talk to you soon.
Yes. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It really was such a joy and truly my pleasure and honor to be able to join the Biz Birthday Bash podcast today. So thank you so much for having me on the show and chatting with me about all of, these fun FAQ questions that we've had.
Yeah, it's been really great. All right. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.